Nigeria Employers Consultative Association (NECA) has called on the federal government to realign its reform policies to enable growth for businesses and enterprises in Nigeria. The call was made by the Director General (NECA), Adewale Smart Oyerinde, at a press conference held in preparation for the 4th edition of the Nigeria Employers Summit, themed Enabling Sustainable Enterprise in a Transitioning Economy, Aligning Fiscal, Trade, and Regulatory Reforms for Inclusive Development. According to Smart Oyerinde, the summit presents an opportunity for the government and the private sector to discuss the way forward for the Nigerian economy as the macroeconomic pressures of inflation, currency reforms, unemployment, and regulatory bottlenecks continue to test the resilience of businesses and citizens alike.
Employers advocacy platform, not only in Nigeria, I can arguably say in Africa, because there's still, from my engagement and interaction with colleagues across the African continent, there's really no gathering that focuses on employers to deal with those issues. So for us, we have a divergent perspective for the OPS, but the message that we're also all trying to communicate to government is make the environment much more hospitable for businesses to thrive. That is our simple, most critical message to government. Now, the need for government to align the reforms. Reforms are meant to promote. Reforms are not ends on their own. They are to initiate a process that will lead to something. And most times, those reforms that initiate the process of growth. So, if you are a reformer or the reformist, and you are not close to the individuals that the reform will affect, you might come with a beautiful reform in context, but operationalizing those reforms will be difficult for those that you are meant to help. In fact, you might be killing those that you are purposely trying to save if you don't align those reforms. So we have reforms, as we mentioned earlier, and as the chair also mentioned. There are reforms going on, the fiscal and tax reforms by the Taiwo Idele Committee, and thank God that has passed through all the processes following the controversy. We have reforms going on in trade. The Technical Working Group on Industrial Revolution, they are also meeting as at this morning, championed by the Ministry of Trade and Ministry of Industry and Investment. That's another reforms. The President, a few weeks ago, also come up with the Buy Nigeria initiative. That's another reform still going on in the context of another. There's also reform going on in the Interior Ministry, in the Immigration Ministry, Immigration Agency, still looking at reforming those. So reforms are going on in everywhere. In the aviation sector, there are reforms. So if you are not careful, the way we had it before, where the monetary policy is fighting is fiscal policy, and they say when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. Those two policies are fighting each other, and it's the private sector that is suffering the misalignment. So we felt all these policies, irrespective of where they are coming from, irrespective of the agency that is driving them or the ministry that is driving them, there must be a nexus. We must create a nexus between all of them, that they feed into each other for the benefit of the private sector, so that this economy can grow at the rate at which government wants it to grow.
The most critical thing that we want to achieve through this summit, through this year's summit, is a synchronization of the policies. Policies cannot work differently or against each other. Policies must work together. So what we want to see is a framework that everybody's working on, a shared objective, shared priorities. That's what we want to see. As long as we have that with the reforms, and like we said, during the course of this press briefing, policies are not an end in themselves. Reforms are not an end in themselves. Reforms lead to something. Policies lead to something. So we must understand, is where the private sector going the same as where the public sector is going? We need to be on the same page. When we are on the same page and we can synchronize the policies, I think we'll move much faster. That's what we want to achieve. We want to drive consensus. We want to really galvanize real action to look at all those reforms, look at those policies, and then realign policies are working documents, they're not cast in concrete. So where there are changes needed, we want to have those changes made. But the important thing is that government and private sector need to work closer together to achieve the industrial and economic growth that we're looking for in Nigeria.
At all times, without fear or favor, I shall also perform my duties selflessly. And to the best of my ability. And in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution of the Union. And that of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The shipping branch of the Maritime Workers Union of Nigeria announced Femi Oluyinka Abbas as the newly elected branch president at its 6th quadrennial branch delegate conference held in Apapa, Lagos. The President General of the Union, Comrade Francis Bunu, stated that shipping is a very peculiar branch. He, however, cautioned the branch officers to always carry along the unit and district officers, who, according to him, are the nerve of the union. The newly elected leaders of the shipping branch assured members that their welfare will be prioritized.
And I believe, with your help, that which we are expecting, be it as an association, whatever may be the task ahead of us, I believe our togetherness will surely achieve this aim. I will only want to implore you that we need to register in our unity this time around. We need to register in our unity. We need to work together.
I don't know who's going to become the president, become the vice, become the federal, and whatever position. Please, 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 please. After today, elections what? Over.
The work.
Is the work. Mr. President will tell you, election don't come in this past though. But about what? Work. There will be target. If we cannot meet up, sorry my brother, there is no room for what? For trial. Because you were being a unit chairman, you were being a district chairman before you become what? A branch president. So therefore you must what? Be acquainted with the activities of your branch. Please, shipping branch, make sure, let us use this opportunity, that there is a new sheriff in town who wants to make sure that let things should what? Should be better for shipping branch.
For more than a decade, the international community set a target to end child labor by 2025. It's now 2025, yet the menace still persists. According to reports by the International Labour Organization and UNICEF, child labor has only been reduced by 50%. In Lagos, Nigeria, I met with a 14-year-old boy, Farouk, not his real name. He tells me he has been living with a family member as a domestic worker and also helps out with the sales of groundnuts.
I work from Monday to Saturday selling groundnuts. When I get home, I also do some house chores. I get tired sometimes, but I have to be out there to earn a living so I can get shelter. My parents live in the village and they believe my coming to Lagos will make me a successful person.
Child labor is really a huge menace. It's something that it has eaten deeply into the fabric of every society, and Nigeria is not an exception. Yes, we must stop child labor. But beyond that as well, our children must be educated, because what gives rise majorly for child labor is a lot of children that are out of school. So when you go to some parts in Nigeria, it's quite huge. So you can go to a state and you see maybe over 500,000 children are out of school. What are you wanting those children to be? The fact that they don't even attend primary school, then maybe when they ought to be in secondary school, maybe somebody is going to exploit them some way, somehow. But a child that is educated, a child that is given the basic education, would be able to fight for the future, will even understand. In fact, if a child is going to school, it's difficult for that child as well to be exploited. But if a child is not going to school and sits at home, literally, that is where you have the challenge. So child labor must stop, but we must address the root. And what is that root? A child who ought to be in school must be in class. Government should enforce that. I mean, we should have today, Ministry of Education, we've challenged them in several fora that they should ensure, both the federal and the state, they must sit down to design systems that will attract children to school. And also, parents as well had a huge role to play to ensuring that their child is not trafficked and to ensure that the issue of child labor is eliminated. So a lot of education must go to the parent. They must understand that you are sending your child of 12, 13 years old today to be whatsoever. That child, you are destroying the future of that child tomorrow. So that education is necessary, it is key. But government must act because it's under their purview.
Child labor is not only a menace, I think it's also a crime against humanity. Because children, as they say, they are supposed to be learning and not earning at that age. So we joined the world in the promotion of the eradication of child labor.
According to the ILO and UNICEF 2025 report, nearly 138 million children were engaged in child labor in 2024, including around 54 million in hazardous work likely to jeopardize their health, safety, or development. The data also shows a total reduction of 20 million children since 2020, reversing an alarming spike recorded between 2016 and 2020.
Thus, child labor undermines the productivity of future workforces and holds back entire economies. We must not allow the childhoods and rights of yet more generations of children to be lost to child labor. Yet, if we were to continue at the same pace, child labor would not be eliminated until the next century. We must therefore speed up efforts. Let me highlight 3 key elements of an effective response. First, we need to promote decent work for parents so that they can earn enough to send their children to school and keep them out of child labor. This requires implementing integrated strategies that promote all fundamental principles and rights at work. Second, we must scale up investments and target them strategically. The face of child labor is extremely young. 79 million children aged 5 to 11 are in child labor. Universal social protection and free and quality education are needed to stop the flow of these most vulnerable children into child labor. Adapting our strategies to local contexts is also key. 61% of children in child labor are in agriculture. 61%. Child labor elimination must be part of the structural transformation of rural economies. 27% of child labor is found in services and 13% in industry. In these sectors, the formalization of the informal economy is particularly important. Third, partnerships and collective action are needed. Alliance 8.7 has a vital role in raising awareness, mobilizing resources, and accelerating progress. I strongly encourage everyone to join the Alliance and thank those who have already done so. The 6th Global Child Labor Conference in 2026, that will be hosted by the State of Morocco, will provide a valuable opportunity to promote exchange of experience, strengthen international cooperation, and chart a course towards 2030.
Child rights activists believe that Farouk and other children like him are in urgent need of social protection.
My take-home specifically is first, we've been able to get more conscientized on the issues of child labor. And I must proceed that as trade unions in Nigeria, we have failed Nigerian children. We will redouble our effort to make sure that, they are no longer vulnerable, or we reduce to some certain magnitude their level of vulnerability. I'm also taking home the fact that there is a need for the trade unions in Nigeria to redouble effort in ensuring that social justice is entrenched, because it is when you have social justice that you have fair and equitable opportunities to thrive. So that we will religiously follow to ensure that Nigerian workers and the entirety of the citizens benefit. And my take home again will be, how do we add value to the working people that toil to create Nigerians' wealth? You will agree with me that the value of the minimum wage is already eroded as a result of inflation and high cost of living. So what do we do outside the box to add value or to bring succor to the Nigerian worker, so that a worker can guarantee at least some reasonable meals on his table, and also take care of a family of maybe a husband, his wife, and perhaps 4 children. So those are for me the critical take home, and you can be rest assured that we are going to have a rethink on how best we can confront these issues to ensure that workers are not left out in the world of work. They benefit. They have something that can take them home, not what is applicable currently in Nigeria. Because, like I said earlier, the value of the minimum wage is gone. And it is also instructive to state that part of the problems we had with minimum wage is the consequential adjustment. I can tell you for free that most of our affiliates in the public sector are shortchanged in calculations of the consequential adjustment. That will also reopen to make sure that workers in Nigeria get value.
At this 113 session of the ILO conference, we have had a lot of discussions and resolutions that border around the participating nations globally, among which we had that of Guinea-Bissau, which Nigeria actively participated. We shared our experiences as regard to minimum wage machinery for the implementation of minimum wage. And like that of Guinea-Bissau, they do not have that opportunity of having machinery for the implementation of minimum wage. So we were co-opted into that committee in order to give our own experience, so that they can go back and then see the possibility of implementing the tripartite committee we are using in achieving and implementing minimum wage in Nigeria. So this is one of it, and other subcommittees which were divided into it. In a nutshell, this session seems to be very, very proactive, as it goes beyond having a resolution, but also talks about the processes involved in implementing the resolutions reached at this particular session of 113.
For all of us, especially from Africa, Nigeria, precisely, a lot of things we've learned in this particular conference. Part of it is just talking about the human right, fundamental human right of every citizen. For instance, talking about security of life, right to everything, right to security, right to life, right to your expression and all, and reporting to this large community of everything that is happening within Africa, especially Nigeria. We're talking about the expectations of new things to happen in a certain environment. And we'll not talk about just transition. There must be a transition, especially in this part of our world. We have been doing so many things in obsolete way, and we have to move on. We have to at least join the Westerns in the manner of way of operation. We can't remain the old way, the way we operate in old ways. We just have to join them to have an environment that is clean, to have an operation in both sectors, either health, either power, or whatever sectors, just to have an improvement and join them the way they operate in the Western now.
On the Profile Interview segment this week, I'll be speaking with the Minister for Labour and Employment in Nigeria. It tells me some of the policies the federal government has put in place to ensure that decent work is achieved for all in the country. It's good to have you on the program.
It's a pleasure meeting you, madam.
A lot has been happening at the 113th International Labour Conference, and you've been a very active part of it. You've made several contributions at the Palais and at some sub-meeting. Can you tell us what has been the experience for Nigeria?
You see, this has to be like that because, you know, Nigeria is considered to be a very big country in this kind of international forum.
Okay, Nigeria, during your presentation on the floor of the United Nations building, you reaffirmed Nigerians' commitment towards ensuring the rights of workers are being protected. Can you tell us why this is apt at this moment?
Well, you see, I have always said, and like the President has briefed me, that he is seriously committed to the welfare of workers and that I should do whatever I can to ensure that we keep them happy and we keep them very peaceful for the good of our dear country and for our economic development of our nation. And that is why I said, and I was very clear in very strong terms in assuring Nigerians and the international community that our country is committed to the welfare of workers and we are always together with them. We are united, we are working, we are listening to them. And that is why throughout the short period of my stay as a minister in the ministry, we have tried to ensure that there is no strike. And I think we will continue with this era of listening ears so that we will have a very good and cordial relationship with workers in the country.
The month of June is the month set aside to celebrate children. And for the International Labour Organization and UNICEF, they are concerned about the issue of child labor. Can you tell us, as a representative of government, what have you been able to do to ensure that child labor is reduced to the barest minimum?
You see, we talked a lot about this matter, and I want to use this opportunity to assure Nigerians and particularly our children that the government is on top of the situation to ensure that adequate legislations, adequate arrangements are made to reduce child labor in Nigeria. Of course, we have some cultural issues that are working against this, but we also have to be up to date and ensure that some of these cultural issues are corrected, and I ensure that children are not unnecessarily tasked on issues that they are not supposed to go into. We have to have an international standard, a best way of practicing how to manage our children so that they can perform better in their schools and in their entire life as people who are very prosperous people who are trying to contribute their quota to the development of our nation. The senator who came with the chairman, who is the chairman of the Senate Committee on Labor, has also reassured us that at the moment they are working on these issues at the National Assembly to ensure that people who are working, domestic workers, are not abused. You know, you find children are being used in houses and the owners of the houses treat them in the way they want. So we want to have a legislation that will regulate these things and to ensure that our children are protected and the workers who are also using the children are also protected. This is what we are doing, and I believe this administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu is committed to this, and we are on it to ensure that it is workable. Yes.
That's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.